some transformation in your thinking, then the quality of life changes. You become a happy person. You become a more stably happy person. So if that happens, that is the purpose of the life. Whereas if some people, they are not keen to listen about the miseries, the impermanence, and so forth. They only want to think about what they want to hear, only the pleasant things. So if that is if this is what we should be doing, then by no means it will bring about any transformation in the mind. Without transformation of the mind, the state of being remains the same, as miserable as before. So now, thinking about, we revolutionize our way of thinking. Earlier, you may not be thinking about the practical terms, such as how things are impermanent, how things are what we consider as happiness is of the nature of the misery and so forth. But reflecting on these points, then we see that our mind becomes more prepared, more resilient to face the challenges. And then in the process, we see that the state of the being from a miserable state of being changes into a state of happiness. So this is the whole purpose of the discourses. So from this we see that under normal or under ordinary situation, we seek happiness totally in reliance on the external factors, external conditions. And then by reflecting on these realities, impermanence, misery, and so forth, then we tend to become more resilient, we tend to become more stable inside, and then we tend to be less affected by external conditions. So the external conditions, then we become less vulnerable to the external conditions. Then we can face the challenges of the external conditions. And however terrible the external conditions might be, we are in such a situation, but your mind doesn't become perturbed. Your mind can be freed from being perturbed by external conditions. So that is how we see that the happiness, which earlier you are easily disturbed by external conditions, irritated by external conditions. Now, because that your mind has become so stable with all these reflections, you become less affected by the external conditions, which means that you become very stable, and then your peace of mind cannot be stirred by the external conditions. So that is how these reflections, they happen. These reflections bring about a change, bring about transformation in your thinking, where your mind becomes more independent of the external conditions, that it is less vulnerable to external conditions. And this is how we seek a genuine happiness through these instructions. Thinking about the happiness. So what we experience, in terms of experiences, what we dislike is misery and what we like is happiness. The misery as we experience is, of course, this can be very easily seen as misery. Nobody wants to have it. Whereas in terms of what we consider as happiness, in actuality, it is simply illusory perception which our mind creates, which our mind plays a trick on us. Say, what is that happiness which we experience? In actuality, it is two things. One are the misery which we are going through, which we experience. When this misery decreases or it diminishes, the process of the misery diminishing, that is what our mind contrives in a form of a happiness. One, and then say you have some expectation, and then as your mind, as some degree of expectation is met, then that situation you contrive it as happiness. Where the misery that you experience, it diminishes, and some degree of expectation is met, then these two are seen as our mind contrives in the form of happiness. In actuality, by no means it is of happy nature. And seeing that as happiness is what creates all our problem. One, if it is a real happiness, then the whatever factors, whatever conditions they are which brought about the diminishing of the misery. When these conditions are there, every time these conditions are there must be the feeling of happiness coming to you. But then in actuality, it is not the case. That the same factors are there, but your mind does not feel happy at a certain point. Likewise, when some degree of expectation is met, but the remaining degree of expectation is not met, if you think in that terms, we see that our happiness, what we mentally create, conceptualize as happiness, this is all illusory. Then the little more detailed explanation of the third chapter is about the impurities. Is that there is a misconception that can potentially come in us to view our body as impure, but the self as pure. And on the other cases where we see even the body is so clean, not only the self, the body is so clean. So the first, we deal with the first one, seeing our body as so clean, and as well as the self. And then here, chapter 4, we see that it is the author explains the impurity of the female body. But then the idea is not to be confined to the female body. This is totally a misconception. The author, he himself being a male and a monastic, the male monastic member, and then teaching the main audience then was the monastic members. So, and the male monastic members. So that way he was, in a way, encouraging the monks, the monastic members, to make it a point that their attachment should be less. And then commentary, the commentaries, particularly Acharya Buddhist commentary, it very clearly stated that should you be a female, then to reflect on the chapter 4, it must be done in relation to the males, reflecting all the demerits, the drawbacks, and the limitations, and the impure nature of the body related to the male. Because whatever is said there in this text about the impurities of the body is something common to the males as well as the females. It's not simply confined to the females. So if you're a female, then tendency is to have attachment towards the males. So we have to cut attachment to the males. Then we can think about all these points in relation to the male's body. So then another point that we need to keep in mind from this learning this chapter 4 is that we have again a false notion. There's a widely prevalent false notion that, oh, I am of higher caste and he is of low caste, she is of low caste. So by birth, my birth is higher, his or her birth is lower. So this is a very false, illusory notion. And then the Buddha gave a very clear the idea, or give such a clear instruction as to how this is false, the false concept that if some of us were born from the sky and others are born from the ocean and others are born from the natural the human womb and so forth, then we can discriminate. Oh, this is such a high caste, that is low caste, one born from the humans. Others who are born from the sky, they are high caste. We can say that, but in actuality, in terms of the material, we were all just equally, whether you're high caste, low caste, we were all born from the same the same source. If it is dirty, all sources are dirty for everyone. And if one is clean, all sources are clean for everyone. So therefore, we are all just equal. There's no basis. There's no basis for us to make discrimination against one another on the basis of the caste. One, and then the Buddha further explained, not only in terms of the source, even in terms of the outcomes, what comes out of the body that we have. We see that only the dirty things come out of our body. Whether you are high caste, low caste, middle caste, whatever, only dirty things come out. So whether in terms of the source or whether in terms of what comes out of our body, we see that everything's just dirty. We are just same. There's nothing that one is coming clean and others they're dirty. So because
So we the net is want to draw the chin, the kishi down to all the shell of the Savachi, music, generation, another person, I did share, well, I do ourselves in the child.
So then this chapter 4, it explicitly explains about the selflessness, the selflessness, selflessness. So this concept of selflessness is more related to undermining the ego, undermining the sense of ego, the sense of pride, conceit. So what it is saying here is that whether you are a king or whether you are a very politically very powerful person, so so it says that relating it to a king with a small analogy of a king. Say if you're a king and you may have you are so conceited. You could be very conceited, thinking that, oh, I'm the king, I'm very powerful, everything belongs to me. In actuality, who is this person you call as the king? Because you become powerful only if the subject respects you as the king. The moment the subject disconnects himself from you, and then the moment the subject loses their respect towards you as a king, you are no more king. So nobody will treat you as a king. And then, so you becoming king is due by dependence on the subject respecting you as the king, and because of which you have a moral responsibility to help this subject. And without your sense of concern for the subject, and the moment the subject they lose their respect towards you as a king, then you're no more king. You become a king becomes it simply becomes nullified. So from that point of view, we see that there's no basis for us to have this sense of ego that I'm someone. One, and the next point is that from the early points, the point of the impermanence, the misery nature, and the impurities. From these, by reflecting on these points, we see that whether it's external object or the internal object, they are all of the nature of impermanence, all of the nature of misery, and all of the nature of the impurities. And because of which, there's no basis for us to feel arrogant and feel conceited. So this is to undermine the sense of the ego connected with the conceit. So very beautiful analogy is given how even as a king or politically powerful person, you might have a sense of arrogance that, oh, I'm the king, I'm the most powerful person, so everything belongs to me. So in actuality, it is simply mutuality of dependence between you and the subject. Because of the presence of the subject, you become the king. If the subject is not there, how can you be the king? And then because of the king, then the subject, if the king does not bully, does not abuse the subject, then the subject will be happy. And likewise, as long as the subject, they regard you as the king, you are the king. So there's mutuality of dependence between the subject and the king. Like say the analogy given is in relation to the forest and the wild animals inside, say the tigers and lions and so forth inside the forest. Say how the forest is preserved and how the wildlife is preserved. These two are again mutually dependent. Seeing that, then we can relate that to the king and the subject. How the king should not be feeling egoistic, that I'm the king, I'm the most perfect person in this world. The fact that you become the most perfect person in this place is because of the presence of the subject. Say, when somebody knows that, oh, this forest is inhabited by lions and tigers, then nobody will dare to get in this forest. So the forest is preserved because of the presence of the tiger and lions inside the forest. And then, Because of the forest, the lions and tigers, they get a place to hide. So the forest is held to the preservation of the lions, for the survival of the lions and the tigers. And the lions and tigers, they contribute to the survival of the forest. So this is this mutuality of dependence for the contribution for the survival of one to the other. So chapter 5, it explains the Bodhisattva's way of thinking, the Bodhisattva's ideal. So after having studied, reflected on the earlier first 4 chapters, knowing that because of the 4 misconceptions, seeing impermanent phenomena as permanent, and seeing the misery things as of happy nature, and seeing the impure things as pure, and then seeing the selfless phenomena to be of self nature. Because of these 4 misconceptions, then we tend to build a sense of attachment and aversion, attachment towards the self and aversion towards others. And because of these 2 ways of the afflictions, attachment and aversion, then we tend to end up in accumulating negative karmas, and because of which we suffer in samsara endlessly. Now knowing that, and then when you see your near and dear ones, your parents, your family members, and all your very good friends, when you look at all of them, we see that just as you are suffering because of the attachment aversion, which in turn are given rise to by the 4 misconceptions, then we see that all others, all that you care, that you are concerned about, all these people, they also suffer the same because of that, the root cause, the 4 misconceptions. And then because of the enormity of the love that you feel towards all these loving near and dear ones, then you feel like looking for ways and means to eliminate this problem. So knowing that all these problems arise from the attachment, the negative karmas, which in turn are given rise to by the attachment and aversion, which is afflictions, which in turn are given rise to by the 4 misconceptions. Then you feel like we're looking for ways and means to eliminate the 4 misconceptions, for which we see that it is only through cultivating the 4 pure knowledge, of 4 pure wisdom, to know the impermanence, the misery nature, the impure nature, and the selfless nature. So you cultivate these 4 wisdom, and then knowing that through knowing these 4 the wisdom, you experience them, you habituate them, and the negative forces, the counter forces, can be eliminated for good. And then that elimination is the elimination of the attachment and aversion. So these 2 negative afflictions are gotten rid of, because of which we stop accumulating negative karma, because of which we stop experiencing pain and fears of samsara. Then we see that finally it is by showing this path, showing this light of the wisdom, to know these 4 realities, impermanence and selfless and so forth, to all the near and dear ones, to all sentient beings, and then knowing that this is what you can do best. Best can be done through yourself, having perfected in the quality of knowledge and the quality of love. So seeking to achieve a state, the highest state, which is imbued or which is endowed with these two qualities, perfect love and perfect knowledge, that is known as the aspiration, bodhicitta aspiration to achieve the highest state of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So which is endowed with the two perfect qualities, perfect love and perfect knowledge. So now let's turn to the book, page 44. The 400 verses on the yogic deeds of Bodhisattvas. Chapter 1. If those whose Lord is Death himself, ruler of the three worlds, without a master, still sound like true vanquishers, what could be more improper? So this stanza, it is instruction. It is advice for us to. It is advice for us, those who seek freedom from taking birth in lower realms, and those who seek freedom from the fears of samsara altogether. So how we are advised to reflect on the impermanence of death, and thereby we become so alert, we become so we build a sense of conscientiousness in engaging in the virtues in a proper way. So here, reflecting on the impermanence of death. So there are two ways of reflecting on this, the fear of the impermanence of death. So from the Buddhist point of view, there is what is known as the former and the later lives. So just as we can track the earlier causes ad infinitum, likewise we can track the succeeding factors or the results, the succession down the line ad infinitum. Of course, it involves numerous reasonings, logic, and so forth. So just as we can track the early causes, we can also track down our future. After the death, it is not the annihilation of the self, but the self continues. Then the question arises that the self that you have now, that you feel now as a self, if that is transient, which means that one day it will come to an end. So this end is known as the death. So at the time of death, then when you think about the impermanence of death, then there's a fear coming in us. And there are two ways for us to have the fear. One way is a very ordinary layperson's way of thinking. They're having the fear of death. And the other one is a very spiritual, very advanced way of thinking, having the fear of death. So layperson version, layperson in a sense, someone who's so naive about the spirituality. So these people, they think that, oh, if I die, then I have this thing left to be done, that thing left to be done. So I'm going to disappear, and so many things are going to be left behind, undone, incomplete. And then a fear, tension comes in you. So this is a very ordinary, very basic, very naive way of way of having fear of the death. Whereas for those people who are spiritually evolved, there the fear of death is very different. It's not like, oh, then if I die, then this I have left this thing to be undone, so this will remain incomplete. No, this is not how one fears. The one who is spiritually evolved will have the fear of the death. For them, the fear of death is more in relation to, okay, in this life, how much virtue I've done, how much non-virtues I've done, and what will really benefit me in the next life. So impermanence of death is what is bound to strike me anytime. Then what will really benefit me in the next journey after the death is the virtues and how much virtue I've accumulated. So in this life, I see that the virtue accumulated is so less, and the negativities which are going to throw me into miseries the next life. So this negativities, this is so vicious, and I'm so rich in that. So then you fear that there's so much negativity I've accumulated, there's so less positive virtues which I've accumulated. So therefore, thinking about the misery, thinking about the death of the impermanence of death, then you feel the sense of urgency that I need to now delete or need to now eradicate the negativities as much as possible, to purify the negativities as much as possible, and to accumulate the positive qualities as much as possible. So this is a very different way of thinking about the fear of the death between the spiritually evolved practitioners versus very naive ordinary person. Then some people, they have the feeling that, to speak about all these things, we just need to have belief, basic belief of rebirth. But about the rebirth, is not sure whether it exists. So why not we talk about something which is so practical, which is of benefit to this life, rather than to think about the next life. So the point is that if we think about ways of preparing ourselves for the next life, automatically the benefit for this life is just a side product. Same for preparing for the next life, it is all three ways of preparing for the next life. One in relation to this small scope person, and the next with a middle scope person, and the third one with a great scope person. Small scope person, it is in relation to what goal that you seek, and the middle also in terms of the goal, and the great with the goal. The great in terms of the goal in terms of full perfection, not just the smaller goals, but the goal in terms of the full enlightenment. Whereas the mediocre or the middle scope person, the middle here meaning freedom from samsara, and the great in terms of the more than the freedom from samsara, full enlightenment, and a small in terms of a happy next life. So happy next life is the small goal, and freedom from samsara is the middle goal, and total enlightenment is Buddhahood, the third goal. So those who seek happy life, happy next life, happy next rebirth, so there what they should be doing is primarily to avoid harming others, and to render happiness towards others. Because by harming others, we see that you reap the benefit, you reap the consequence of that. Then you reap the harm eventually. So we see that by thinking about taking a favorable birth in next life, then you will refrain from harming others. As you stop harming others, then the feeling of compassion arises. Compassion is defined as a loving attitude which wishes others to be freed from suffering. So when you stop harming others, you are simply wishing others to be free from suffering. So compassion increases. Likewise, you think about the happiness for others. When others are deprived of happiness, you seek others to be endowed with happiness. So there is loving kindness. So naturally, anyone who has compassion and who is loving kindness, the person is going to be so happy. So the person will stop unnecessary attachment and aversion to things. And all problems that we experience, even in this life, this is all rooted to, all these problems are created by the misconception of a false conceptualization of attachment towards the self and aversion towards others. So we see that preparing for the next lives, even in terms of the small scope person's aspiration, we see that this life automatically is going to be very happy for you, and all the people who are around you, they're going to be happy. And then likewise, if you belong to the practitioner of the middle scope person who wishes to free yourself from the samsara, the fears of samsara altogether, then the main practice is to see yourself and others as equal. So just as I don't want misery, others should not be in misery. Just as I want happiness, all others also should be given happiness. We're all just equal. So the moment you see that we are all just equal, then attachment towards yourself and aversion to others is automatically cut. And because of which, all unnecessary problems will disappear. So again, we see that even from the point of view of you as a practitioner preparing for a greater goal, the goal of the mediocre person, we see that this life is very much happy for yourself and for all the people around. And for no doubt, the pointless to mention about the people who seek the goal of the great scope person, who seek a total benefit, say full enlightenment for all sentient beings. So these people, they cherish others more than oneself. The moment you cherish others more than oneself, there is room for attachment and aversion. So the attachment aversion stops. And we see that all problems somehow, they're rooted to these two negative emotions, attachment and aversion. So we see that even if you are preparing yourself for the journey for the next life, after the death, we see that the happiness of this life is guaranteed.
那啥吧，估计他这些事情是不多。这个，那么多说像忙起来，这个还是刚才的秘报道，上面讲到些，这个什么，我就是忙的辛苦了。那人性的用的个这个所有都不，按照这个是叫的说出来，这个用些的，你们去看看啥样的，说是电视呀或者什么上面打的这种多，那就平时是不要有的还不多。他这个身边写了几个，他其实在说妈妈，跟很多个要妈妈。而且他查的，他们不晓得查的，说是查了，他也不就是身边几个多，听说的是吧？我觉得有没有
So all the problems that we see, that we experience, we see that it is created broadly in two ways. One is wrong way of thinking, distorted way of thinking, that creates all the problems. This is one. Then another one is a natural problems. Say, youth ending up in the old age. Then say then wealth, accumulation of wealth, ending up in exhaustion of wealth. And then say the natural disasters. And then living, ending up in death. So these are all the natural processes. So natural processes which we experience as pain. So the pain can be of two kinds. One, which our wrong way of thinking creates, wrong way of conceptualization, creating our own problems. And another one is a natural process, which changes from the good to the bad. So we see that there are two kinds. And for this, the advice given by the Buddha is that for those things which the problems which arise in us due to our mistaken thinking, if you know how to think properly, how to think in a nice way, in a proper way, then we see that our problems can be problems which belong to that category that can easily be evaded. For example, say one analogy given by a teacher here is that say the Tibetans, when the communist Chinese, they invaded Tibet, and many Tibetans, they escaped. They escaped to various countries like India. And then some people, they unnecessarily worry, okay, now I've left this in my home, I've left that, number 3, number 4. And then some people, their way of thinking is much more courageous. The whole country is lost. We have lost the whole country. Just all these things that you are mentioning, that you are counting, they are just so insignificant as compared to the whole nation. We have lost the whole nation. The whole nation is invaded. Your thing is just very insignificant. It's so tiny. So why should we? As long as you are free, that is such a reward. It's so rewarding that you are free, that you are not in the hands of your enemies. So thinking, if you have such a proper way of thinking, then we see that unnecessary problems can be evaded. You can be freed from them. Then the Buddha said, whereas with the problems which are a part of the natural process, say youth ending up in old age, and the old age ending up youth and old age ending up in death, and then say the wealth, the accumulation of wealth ending up in exhaustion of wealth, and so forth, we see that they're all just natural processes. And the Buddha said that what is a natural process happening to you? It is not confined to you. It is what happens because it is a natural process. It happens to everyone. If you want to live long, which means that you cannot evade aging. If you want to live long, which means that you have to be ready to feel the aging, to experience the old age. And if you don't want old age and you want to live long, this is totally incompatible. It's not possible. So old age is something nobody wants. At the same time, nobody wants to die early. So therefore, these are the dichotomous the ways of thinking. So from that point of view, we see that the Buddha in fact advised one lady who lost her child, and the Buddha advised the mother that don't worry about the demise of your child. And this is what happens to everyone. The moment you're born to die. This is the reality of life. So this is something which befalls everyone, is not something confined to you. So what involves the natural processes, that is responsible for our miseries. So these we have to be well prepared much before in time, that these are the natural process and these are not something confined to me. This is something which governs the entire reality. So with this awareness, the pain that can potentially arise in us due to the degeneration, which involves natural processes, this pain will be reduced. And with a proper way of thinking, with a very rational, practical way of thinking, all the unnecessary problems which we create because of our wrong way of thinking, all can be evaded. So this is what helps us to make our life much more qualitative and happy. Okay, Venerable Geshe Yeshe Thabkhe would like to invite some questions. Since there is already like 10 to 8, maybe 1 or 2 questions. Very quick, anyone?
I have one question that is not related to this discourse. I just want to know whether the level of pure awareness, it is subject to the planetary disposition.
The level of the awareness is subject to
the state of pure consciousness.
Yeah.
Whether it is affected by the planetary disposition.
Planetary.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The question is the pure consciousness.
Yes.
The degree of the purity of the consciousness, whether that is whether it is dependent on the planetary locations or the what do you call it? Planetary dispositions. Okay.
Sagar chidan di dawa dan lima dan chiko le jadan dan ro chidan shene mi lulia chama di university yeso mi lulia chika shore chama shi was so ke da de chama ko so ya do dan sa de ke ma ke se de de ji je di ya de shi ya di ko si kuran da shene ji de jira a de da shi na da shene je ni ko Sara to be honest, she those the years we can say she from the never get that she can very good to do something to you see that in a question that you get attention to you with the chance.
The sense of the discourse sense of the place, or the sense of the delivery.
Oh, did you get a cheese, you know, that thing down to the shop, you might do check on it. Where the one to do, not so much we do, so the foundation is in door. She knew some much China, this was the same some much to position the family shape. Can be down to a shanky down to a sailor. They cannot talk to she knew she did that. I was in the she done to
So the answer is that no doubt the planetary dispositions or the planetary the setup or the locations that has relationship with our physiological the changes and so forth, which in turn has so much to do with our mind. So it has relationship with the mind and the where your mind becomes more clear, luminous, pure consciousness, and these things is possible. But on the basis of the pure rational thinking, then in the text, we don't really see the rational way of pinpointing to the relationship between the planetary dispositions and the mental states, like activating the pure consciousness and so forth. But of course, there is a relationship between the two. Go to the next question. The last question.
Please give more clarity about transformation of mind by revolutionizing the way of thinking. What is this? I mean, can give more clarity. Transformation of mind.
Oh, transformation mind.
And by revolutionizing the way of thinking by
Okay. simple that you cannot simple that the kind of some pamaj simple that you cannot it's just cannot mas
that data. So you need to know answer the audio. You don't come and do a conversation and you are not going to meet some of the Medusa, so that's we should manage to choices. Never I'm making a solution, making a solution. Only the solution of this. I should make you, sir. I'm making a solution. The current and the conversation. I should not share or actually share.
Transformation. The question is, can our teacher go a little detail into explaining as to how the change in your thinking brings about transformation in the mind? So the answer is that the whole purpose of this class on this text is for that purpose, to bring about transformation to your mind by changing your mental thinking. And to give one simple example is that, say, with anger, if you're a very short-tempered person, then how to undermine this, undermining the anger. This is known as the transformation taking place in you. So this transformation takes place in you through reflecting on the demerits of these negative thoughts. The more you think about the demerit of anger, the more you feel angry towards anger, and because of which you don't tend to encourage anger, and then the anger automatically diminishes. Same as for anger, it says that simply because of the arising of the anger, it not only makes you unhappy, it makes everyone around unhappy, and it makes you also unhappy. It destroys your peace of mind. One, and then it says that in anger, you take some decisions. You can take very wrong decisions, and which eventually you will regret. So the reflecting, there are so many demerits, drawbacks of the anger pinpointed in all these texts, that the more you reflect on these demerits and the fact that you don't want to have these demerits, and then yet these are coming because of the anger. So only if you supersede or override anger, only can you think of eliminating these demerits from you. So how to think, what the points about the demerits of generally anger. So these are all elucidated in this text. We have to study them, and then the more we think about them, we see that the anger diminishes. This is the transformation.
I have a doubt related to this question. In the state of pure consciousness, no thought is there. Then how the process of thinking can lead to the pure state of awareness?
Okay.
Is it possible? Because everybody knows
Yes.
that we should not be angry, we should not do this and that, but that doesn't help anyone.
Oh no, let's not conclude that. Right?
My question,
I know what you're saying.
scientific terms say,
The pure consciousness is deprived of thoughts.
yes.
So, by bringing about change in the thought, how can it possibly bring
How
about
can it can lead to the pure consciousness?
pure consciousness? Okay, yeah. So, and then you, on top of that, you added one more. You said that by thinking about, oh, don't be angry, so this will not help, right?
남도です。남도 우리가 여기 세계 세계 같은 장마세. 또 뭐. 시골에 아니 가 가장 그 시기에 말에 교체가 되는 것은 남비가 됐어. 레디에 우리 시기가 됐어. 어디 람핑 됐어. 아니 이까 이 그래 지도다 또 매기 세계 세계 같은 장마세.
그러면 저같이 삼바시 공부해서 좀 쉬고 남배시 제가 대다 뭐 공부할 때 무슨 하고 돼요. 한번 이렇게 말을 공부해요. 이렇게 하고. 근데 공부할 때 무슨 저 상담을 내려서 어디 못 내려서 야내한테 상담이야. 야내한테 상담이나 뭐 공부하는 거야. 공부될 남도 이 로베 남도 다 제가 공부를 해야 될 상담한테 그 또고들 해야 되고 양다고 또 근데 공부치에 지금 공부는 무슨 데는 또 없어 남도 강가 파까지 그 세와 candiam 샤이도 공부해지요 이 공부 남도 상에 가는 마샤야 심세리 candiam 공부해지요.
In fact, we need to keep in mind that for transformation of the mind, so for this we need three things to think about these positive thoughts. Positive thoughts, say the purpose is to eliminate the negative thought such as anger. And then to eliminate this negative thought, we need to cultivate the positive thoughts. And then for cultivating the positive thoughts, it should be done in three ways. First one is learning. So when your parents tell you, but don't do this is bad. Don't show anger, this is bad. So you are simply learning it. And then this learning may not necessarily have a direct effect in eliminating your anger. So this learning, after learning that, then you have to move this to the reflection. You have to gain conviction in this. Not only that you have heard someone saying this, but you need to gain conviction, for which we need to reflect more. Reflect, every now and then you reflect on it constantly, and then you gain conviction. Oh yeah, I could see, look at this person, look at that person, look at myself, because of this anger, and then it simply destroys the peace of mind in that person, he, she, me. So we gain deep conviction through a profound reflection. Once you gain the conviction, then like taking the medicine, we have to habituate in this way of thinking through familiarizing in this. So that is known as meditation. Learning, reflection, and meditation. Only then we see that there's a change happening. Usually people tend to know things by being angry, you are unhappy, others are unhappy. But then this knowledge is not transferred to the reflection level. No, that is transferred to the habituation or the meditation level. So we are not supposed to leave we are not supposed to just leave it on the intellectual understanding. It must be transformed into reflection and meditation. And then what you said about the pure consciousness, this is very true. Say, that comes only at a very later stage where one is able to gain the realization of the ultimate reality, emptiness. When you realize that, and then there is a certain point where you meditate on it in a non-conceptual, non-thought level. So there, at that point, which is also referred to as the non-dual experience of emptiness, non-dual experience of the emptiness of the pure consciousness. At that point, then, whether it's a positive thought or a negative thought, all are to be kept aside. Simply abiding the experience of the non-dual pure consciousness. Okay, thank you. No, yes. So to add to what is already answer given to your question about comparing the negative thoughts and then bring about transformation of your mind. So there, for example, the what is the negative thought to be transformed into positive? That negative thought is, for example, anger. So this anger should be transformed into patience. Opposite of anger is patience and tolerance, or forbearance. So how do we go about doing that? Is by, say, with anger, we learn from your elders, your parents, and so forth. By being anger, you are never happy. So don't do it. So we know that. The problem with us is that we have no problem knowing things, but we have problem not habituating, not practicing, not meditating on these points. So whereas, as mentioned earlier, learning, reflection, and meditation, 3 points. So we feel so complacent with the first point, which is the knowledge. I know that by being angry, I'm unhappy. I know that. So you're just happy about it. And without this, we see that the opposite force, which is anger. This anger is what we are so habituated and what we are so addicted since time immemorial. And the positive thought, which is supposed to be the remedy to this anger, this positive thought is so juvenile. It is so weak at this moment. It is so weak. It is not spontaneous, but the anger is so spontaneous. Positive thought is so weak. The patience, when you think about it, then slowly, it comes in a very weak, faint state, and then the anger comes immediately destroying the positive thought. So the positive thought as well, just as the anger is so intense, so spontaneous, we need to cultivate this positive thought as well as so spontaneous and intense. So how to do that is not simply leaving it on the level of the learning. It must be transformed to the reflection and the meditation. Say you want to eliminate your anger, and then always you should be mindful that, oh, I should be practicing patience. I should be practicing patience. And if you're not patient, if you give in to anger, then all these demerits are there. When you